Do we really spend more on bike trails than city streets? Welcome back, X-Town. This is X-Town, the podcast. I'm your host, Josh Long, founder of Xenia's Word on Street, where you can find local news, events, and views at xeniaword.com. Recording another podcast this week, talking about city spending. Before I dive into that, I was kind of skimming through Facebook this morning, just checking out some pictures and events held in our city over the weekend. We tend to kind of take for granted things, kind of get narrow-minded in our opinion of our city. Countless times I've heard people post on Facebook and heard them say it right to my face, why would anybody want to come to Xenia? They really take for granted some of the awesome things going on in our community. And this weekend, just skimming through small events, like I saw Doug Yates Karate School hosted a tournament where they brought people in from different schools to their studio and dojo there on Allison Drive. A big event held this last weekend, was the Ohio Rivers Runners Marathon. It's the oldest marathon, I think, in the state. This is their 52nd year. Thousands of people come into Xenia to run this marathon. It starts at the YMCA and goes up the bike trail and comes back. It's a pretty big event. It's actually one of the least expensive marathons and the oldest marathons in the area, in the state. So it gets a lot of runners here working to qualify for bigger events. They brought in thousands of people into our community this weekend. It looks like that went off very successfully, and I'm glad that they come back year after year. All right, guys. So I wanted to kind of talk today about city spending. It's weather starting to break, so we're starting to see the city kick off some projects like the downtown streetscape, some park improvements. A lot of people are kind of discussing, debating, pissing, moaning, celebrating a wide variety of emotions around the restriping and removal of a traffic lane downtown. That's part of the city's pedestrian and bike safety program that's making changes along Detroit and Main Street downtown for bike and pedestrian traffic. Whatever your opinion of the actual project is, one of the things floating around is that there's not enough transparency about these things. And this is one of those projects where I typically agree that there's not a lot of transparency around city spending. In fact, I started this Xenia's Word on the Street in 2010 because of that. Because I wanted to bring things out of public record and into public knowledge. I really believe there's a difference between something being public record and something actually being public knowledge. What's frustrating is I'm learning even with this project that you can only do so much. The city can only do so much. They can do more, but they can only do so much. I can only do so much. I could do more, but I can only do so much. But this project has been going on since 2014, and there's been no shortage of 5-6 town hall type planning sessions, at least 8 or 10 public meetings I know that was discussed. There's been what I saw no less than 5 or 6 different newspaper and online articles about this project. There's been 2 or 3 Facebook groups and admins sharing pictures and things of the project, and it absolutely stirs emotions and opinions. But it's probably one of the most transparent city projects been going on for so long. I think what makes it a point of contention is that it's a project that has very diverse opinions for and against, just like the city hall and police department project. We tend to think that just because the most vocal side of the debate is against it, that the majority of the public feels that way, and that's not always the case. It's a weird dynamic. There's a lot of people that say that City Hall, building a new city admin building and the new police department, expanding and renovating the police department, was something that a majority of voters did not want. And I can't say that for sure. I can say that a lot did and a lot didn't. I could say that the most people that were against it were probably the most vocal. I can't think it was that huge of a decisive issue, though, because every member of city council who voted for it and then ran for re-election clearly won their seats back. So I think it's a project where we can have an opinion for or against, but it doesn't mean it's misspending. It's just you were for it or you were against it. And I was personally involved in that, so I was for it. But I can understand why people were against it. But it kind of is what it is, and you guys know how much I hate that for those who listen. So that's not the point of today's podcast. The point of today's podcast is talk about the city's 5-year capital improvement plan. Now, I believe wholeheartedly the city governments do a terrible job in informing the public. They're doing better, but overall, not a great job. They get into their own little circles. They go to Rotary meetings, and they work very hard informing a very small amount of people. But the masses, though, aren't being informed. I wish I can draw circles and show you guys that we have a population in our community. That's a big circle, includes city and township. And then we have a smaller population that's just the city. And the city government is responsible for just that population, the voters, the project, the infrastructure, informing them. And then there's a smaller circle of people who own businesses or part of Rotary Club. These are very active and respected and admirable people in our community. And city governments work very hard informing those people. Not as much informing that larger majority who just eat, work, and play in Xenia, and they're not in the know. I think we can do a better job, and that was one of the things I started out with Xenia's Word on the Street, to move things from public knowledge. Move things from public record to public knowledge. And even I, the last couple of years, have taken a back seat to it because I got burnt out in city politics. But I'm reinvesting myself because I want to be an informed member of our community. I want to contribute to it, and that means I have to educate myself. And the one way I do that is I look at the city's 5-year capital improvement plan. I don't look at the city's 500-600 page budget and try to pull things out. I already know that the city spends most of their money on water and infrastructure. So that's a misconception amongst our community, is that we think that the top priority is roads. It's not. It's a priority. The top priority in our community is not roads. The top priority, in my opinion, in our community when it comes to dollars being spent, infrastructure being improved, is water. I say that again. The top priority, in my opinion, of how money's spent for infrastructure, for operations, is water. Without it, we cannot survive. That is why over half the budget goes to water. I think even above roads is public safety, police, fire, services. And we can debate the nuances of that, how many fire trucks we need, how many ambulances we need, how many police officers we need. But the priority still, though, is public safety. Water, public safety. That is why 80% of our budget is between water and public safety. And what we want to debate publicly is this last roughly 15% that go to roads and parks and things. I understand that these are important. I understand that these are important to economic development. I understand that these are important to this life in our city. But as an informed voter, I need to make sure I understand the big picture. That I'm not just focusing on 20% when our city staff and our city council and our city manager has to focus on the 100% of the budget, 100% of the priorities: water, public safety, roads, parks. There's a misconception in this community that we spend more on bike trails than city streets, and I'm going to share some information, some data with you. I think that will dispel that rumor. We'll also highlight we can do a better job, though. So the city's 5-year capital plan can be found on their website at www.ci.xenia.oh.us. You can find the budget and the 5-year plan. If you want to spend time digging through a 500 or 600 page operational budget, go right ahead. I've done it for about 5 years on city council, and but I can learn a lot by taking 30 minutes and reading the 5-year capital plan. That's the meat that everyone wants to talk about. What parks are we doing? What roads are we doing? What police cars are we buying? What water treatment improvements are we making? That's all in the 5-year plan. Now, this is just a plan. The 5-year capital plan is just a plan. It's a best guess view on how we're going to spend our capital funds from this year, looking out 5 years. So, of course, when we're looking at 2018, those are pretty solid plans. But when we're looking at that document for 2020, those are pretty fluid plans. So I'm going to spend today hitting on some of the big highlights of the 5-year capital plan. What is the city planning? Where are we spending the money? So I'm just going to dig in here. I do want to point out there is a nice section here in the 5-year capital plan. I think it's on page 20. talks about street and transportation annual street program. It is a great, one or two paragraphs here that kind of just talks about the major projects at Colorado Drive and 2nd Street and Progress Drive and where that money's coming from and where the struggle is. It really gives you an insight into how the city engineers department and city administration is really where their thoughts are around these programs and what's holding them back, what they feel like's holding them back. It's a narrative that you can read. You don't have to agree with it. I don't agree with all of it, but is it a narrative to just kind of figure out where their mindset is? Because I want to tell you guys something. There are some bad apples in city government. There are some bad, selfish apples in city government. But largely, they're not a bunch of morons and tyrants running our government. They're citizens who actually have to cut the check, who actually have to spend the money. They can't just dream. They can't just complain. They have to do it. And this 5-year capital plan narrative gives you an understanding of their thoughts without having to go to meetings, without having to sit there, because you're not going to get any feedback from a meeting with them. At a public meeting, you can get this information pretty quickly without having to waste your time at a meeting. I only get up and go to a meeting if I absolutely have something I want to say. Because if I just want to listen, I can read the minutes. I can watch it on YouTube. I don't know. I'm just different that way. But just so you guys know, there's this rumor that we spend only $500,000 a year on roads. And just the 5-year plan dispels that actually quite a bit. For example, in 2017, we spent more than that. We spent 1.8, looks like, roughly $1.8 million on roads. $876,000 from our transportation budgets, paving the street programs, paying for the Allison work, that 2nd Street is coming up. Then grant funds that paid for West 2nd Street and South Progress Drive, which is ongoing right now. So $800,000 in city investment and another 1.1 in grant dollars. We've spent quite a bit of money on roads, people. Not enough. Still not enough. All right. So I really invite you guys to take a look at this 5-year capital plan, but I'm just going to kind of talk about, I'm reading through this, I'm starting in this and just looking at big dollar numbers. I'm just going to kind of share some of the 2018, 2019 5-year plan. What's in this 5-year plan? I'm not going to talk about 2022. What I'm finding, though, we do our best to plan out 5 years, but the city government, the money coming from state, tax revenues, it's kind of wishy-washy. So I'm really going to focus on what is the capital plan for 2018, 2019. And as I'm scrolling down through, I want to highlight some of the big things. Of course, this year they're planning $150,000 in crack sealing. That's something pretty routine we've been doing for quite a bit of time. They're planning $157,000 in right-of-way acquisition as they're working to improve the Church Street and Columbus intersection. They have to acquire some of the medians and things around there to make those improvements. Just looking down through here, there's $350,000. That's actually more than we spend on bike trails a year. $350,000 planned for the 911 upgrade at our dispatch center. That's something we take for granted. It's just the cost to maintain the 911 system, and when it comes to software and payroll. But this is $350,000 planned this year. It's not grant funded. $350,000 that we're going to plan to do the next gen 911 upgrade. Now we do charge some municipalities, the county, I think Bellbrook. I forget everyone who partakes in our 911 system. So this may not be coming completely 100% out of tax dollars, but it is still coming out of our city revenue. $400,000 grant funds being planned to do some remediation on the Hub District. The Hub District is actually where the bike hub is and those properties in front and behind it. And for a lot of people who may not know, behind there is quite a bit of an eyesore. There's some old factories and plants with some EPA issues that need to be cleaned up, and it's up to us as taxpayers because the people who made those messes have come and gone. Property owner probably has no money. So the city always had a plan to be able to buy those properties, get it cleaned up, and reclaim it as a park in that area. So there's $400,000 in grant funds for that district for collier remediation in that area for the environmental studies and demolition and paving of the property down there. just looking down through here again, looking for big ticket items. I'm reading them as I'm learning, you're learning. $25,000 in 2018, non-grant funded, going towards industrial park signage as they make improvements to the industrial park. I'm not going to give you my opinion on a lot of these. Big ticket item looking out in 2020 is what we're going to do with the YMCA building, what we're going to do with that property. Looks like there's some planning and some funds being allocated with the possibility of having to demo that building. Doesn't mean they're going to demo it. I don't know what their plan is. Their plan could be trying to sell it over the next year or two. I don't know. But the city does have to plan for being a part of paying for that property and what we're going to plan to do with it. And that's a big expense looking out there, looking 2 to 3 years out. $200,000 in a Shawnee Park playground. You may not know this, but the city is, I probably should record a podcast on this particular topic. The city is planning some major upgrades to the park at Shawnee Park, the playground itself, to replace the mulch and the equipment and make it more handicap accessible, make the equipment stronger and more modern for today's. It's one of the busiest playgrounds in our community. It's my opinion, a jewel of our community, but $200,000 being planned in park improvements for Shawnee Park. That's a big ticket item, 2018. All right. It looks like $80,000 this year on some trucks and backhoe and equipment for the park department. We have parks. We got to pay to maintain them. They have to budget every year in the capital plan to replace mulch and trees. $15,000 here, $15,000 there can really start to add up. In fact, total capital layout for 2018 for Parks and Rec is $332,000. And 2/3 of that is just in the Shawnee Park playground upgrade. So keep that in mind. Again, Parks and Recreation, $332,000. We talk about parks, we talk about bike trails and how much we're spending on them. Next year, it looks like $332,000 for this year. This next section is a big one. I'll spend some time talking to you guys about. These are planned big dollar items for transportation, our street programs. They're planning $400,000 for mill and fill and crack sealing this year. They're doing the resurfacing of streets. $25,000 is our portion of the local match to repave 2nd Street, with another $200,000 in grant funding coming in for next year. Then another $136,000 for 2nd Street. We're spending a lot of money repaving 2nd Street from Allison to Church and Allison to Rockwell, which looks like it's going to total up over this year and next to be $300,000 or $400,000 in both local match and grant funds for paving. So it looks like $561,000 is planned this year for paving projects and mill and fill programs. But it doesn't stop there. The street budget goes on. We have to keep in mind that the street budget, the paving budget, is not just the paving work. For example, there's out of that budget also comes snow plow and hoppers. It looks like we're replacing one of the hoppers or plows this year for $20,000. $80,000 is being earmarked for vehicles, dump trucks, loaders, things that it takes to maintain these programs, things that they need to fix a water main if it breaks. We got to be able to dig the ground. That equipment all costs money. Oh, I'm rambling on here, so I'm just going to kind of dig into some bigger ones. $165,000 being planned as part of the Progress Drive project, 2018 budget. That's an ongoing thing for this year and next, that street continues to get fixed. Bike trails, looks like in 2018, no major investment in bike trails. Actually, the bike trail total capital line item for 2018 is $0. $0 in 2018 for capital infrastructure improvement for bike trails. It offsets the rumor that we're spending more money on bike trails and roads. Next year, it looks like they're planning some major changes to bike trails through a grant project, which includes 2nd Street, the work being done on 2nd Street for pedestrian improvements. It looks like a big grant for $600,000 to create a more safe environment for pedestrian crossing the bridge over 35. So that's something to really think about. I live on this other side, so I know that it is, unless I take the long way around, go north, hit the bike trail, and take it into town, you can't get over these bridges. It's very dangerous at night. Seeing people walk over these bridges to get to the Airhead subdivision, Windsor Park area, Sterling Green area. So it looks like some major grants are being sought after to improve pedestrian crossing, which is going to be huge, trying to connect the Progress Drive Center, the Reach Center, the YMCA there, with a large portion of the population who do not live They live in the city but cannot take a sidewalk into the city. That needs to be fixed. We should be able to walk. Our kids should be able to walk from our neighborhood to the YMCA. In the west side, where in Lanewoods and Arrowheads and Sterling Greens, and this is where the majority of the population in the city is living now. That these bridges need fixed, and I'm glad to see they're going after grants, but I'm giving my opinion now, so we'll skip over that. So that's 1.6 something million dollars looking at the 361 street program, with nothing going to really bike trails. So that's something to think about. It's way more than $500,000 in fixing roads. It's looking at pedestrian and road traffic at $1.6 million. It's way more than we spend on bike trails. But it doesn't stop there. 2018, we continue to go through it. Now we're into the 362 capital project funds. We're looking at a $400,000 grant to repay 2nd Street. Going on here, we're looking at a $400,000 grant to rebuild Progress Drive and the rehab going on there. So millions of dollars going into roads and pedestrian traffic crossing in our community in 2018 planned. But you know what? None of that compares to some of the numbers I'm getting ready to share with you. I'm going to share some line items in a budget and a plan that we don't bitch about on Facebook, because we don't think about. We don't have enough public dialogue around this. It is astonishing how these things can go on and we don't talk about it. Courts, $20,000, $30,000. But let's talk about public safety. All right, 2018, $250,000 equipment purchase, $250,000 going towards the replacement and planning for a new fire station. That's going to start coming up here soon, guys. Our fire departments are not centrally located. They're small. They're outdated. If we're going to invest money in building a new or renovating what we have, we need to really consider where we keep it. We don't have a fire station centrally located to the population. So the city has to start planning for facilities replacement and repairs within this 5-year budget. Matter of fact, it looks like it could be $3 to $4 million that they're looking at over the next 5 years. $240,000 budgeted for a medic replacement in 2018. Then there is no medic replacement. Again, they do that on a 5-year plan, so they'll buy a medic in 2018, and we won't buy another one until 2020, and they'll rotate these 3 or 4 medics we have every year or two, planning to replace one, or every 5 years, planning to replace one. So $240,000 in 2018 to replace a medic, $38,000 geared towards some of the support vehicles for the fire department. That's the trucks and smaller vehicles they use. Law enforcement, again, $115,000 in the marked cruiser, $30,000 in the unmarked cruiser replacement plan. About $115,000 to $120,000 a year is budgeted and planned for the rolling replacement of cruisers. These are vehicles that don't last very long. You don't get 10, 12 years out of a police cruiser. They're constantly on the road, constantly used 24 hours a day. So those are big ticket items. We're looking at, over $1 million planned in 2018 for public safety capital improvements between fire station repairs, police cars, fire trucks. We don't really talk a lot about that. It's a big ticket item. $40,000 being aimed towards a vehicle loader for the street maintenance department. $72,000. Now we're going to start talking about water treatment. This is what I want to talk about, water treatment, how fast this adds up. $72,000. These are not grant funds. These funds have to come out of our city funds and our water rates. $72,000 planned to redevelop wells, our source water. We have to continue to protect and redevelop source water. As one well runs out, we have to tap for new ones. $13,000 for monitoring wells, early warnings. You tap up the water source to track any type of contaminants and issues coming down. $25,000 for treatment equipment. $20,000 for valve replacement. $15,000 for equipment, technical support, and system updates to the SCADA system, which is a supervisor control and data acquisition. It's the automatic systems that run our water treatment plant, which looks like overall there's $10,000, $12,000, $13,000, $60,000 there for SCADA improvements and monitoring. We're looking at $70,000 planned for facilities for water treatment. The bulk of that looks like is $60,000 for water tower painting and inspections. $60,000 there, $70,000. Looks like this is a big point of contention. So we supply water to Central State University. As part of us supplying water out there, we have to maintain the infrastructure. So there's a tower out there. Looks like they're planning $300,000 for a tower, fixing it, painting, and inspections 5 years out. $50,000 being planned for a booster station replacement for Central State University to continue to be able to supply water to them 5 years out. Just going down here, a big item, $620,000 for Patton Street standpipe. This is fixing water infrastructure storage tanks out on Patton Street. $550,000 for the West 2nd Tower fix and periodic maintenance and repairs there for the interior and exterior of that water system, that tower. $20,000 just overall plan for the asset management plan, developing, keeping our documents and things up to date that's required by the EPA, state and federal. So at the $101.2 million in total infrastructure improvements for 2018, just into water infrastructure. $1.2 million in the water infrastructure. We don't really talk about water towers. We don't talk about pump stations. We don't talk about those things that take to keep our water going. I don't see us talking a lot about it in the public. $150,000 of water main replacements. That's part of the annual program. They budget $150,000 a year to fix water mains throughout the city. $50,000 a year for replacement of meters. So water and water distribution adds up to be about $1.9 million in capital improvements for 2018. So these numbers add up fast. They just do. They're just big ticket numbers that we don't spend a lot of time talking about. $172,000 being planned for conveyor and equipment maintenance at our treatment plants. $75,000 for the replacement of a fence around the Ford Road water treatment plant. $50,000 into building repairs and improvements at the Glady Run water treatment plant. Do you even know that we have 2 treatment plants to treat our crap? Well, I didn't really know. I knew we had 1. I didn't know we had 2. $1.7 million of infrastructure improvements planned in 2018 to fix Glady Run projects there when it comes to water rehab and flow. There's something like over $2 million planned in 2018 for water treatment. Just capital improvements. It's not operating. It's just capital improvement. Keeps going on. There's $67,000 for sewer collection supplies, $75,000 for manhole replacements, $250,000 for sewer lip linings, $100,000 for sewer lateral replacements, $700,000 for repairs and replacement of a lift station. And a lift station is what's used to get water and sewer and trunks on different elevations so it continues to flow towards the treatment plants. $700,000 for repair and replacement of the Garcia lift station. $50,000 for the water meter replacement program we talked about earlier, bringing the total for sewer infrastructure repairs to $3.4 million. That's just sewer. Now we have to look at stormwater. It's $175,000 in combo sewer cleaners. That's equipment used to clean the sewer and stormwater drains. It adds up so fast. This is interesting. Landfill. I did not really know this till I got on city council, and I'm rambling here, and I hope you're learning something from some of these numbers. But we own a retired closed landfill. If you don't know where it's out near the city garage, out what used to be Babe Ruth, West Park. It's actually much larger than I thought it was. It's definitely not just a dump area that probably many of us threw stuff away. It's hundreds of years worth of dumps that go all the way down towards Solon Rivers Park, down Tyler Road, and all the way back up towards Lanewood. That landfill costs us hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to maintain. That closed landfill not being used, hundreds of thousands of dollars to maintain. $10,000 for general repairs and operating to the landfill. $35,000 for a building that used to be there is not used anymore. $100,000 being invested into the active gas monitoring system. Because you own a landfill, you have to monitor all the property boundaries to ensure that the gas, the methane, is not leaching off on the private property. In fact, if you don't know, we actually burn a lot of methane and gas off. There's a valve behind the city garage that it's used to kind of capture and burn that off. They've looked at for years to capturing that gas and reheat properties and things, and nothing. Just the total dollar to put that infrastructure in place has been too high to warrant the economics, but it is burned off, and we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to maintain, collect, monitor, and dispose of gas coming off a landfill. Just to let you know how much past generations' decisions affect future generations. Looks like they're paying $10,000 to replace downtown trash cans, $60,000 looking to purchasing a 1-ton pickup truck for street sweeping. The point is that this is just tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds and thousands and millions of dollars that go out in the capital improvements. And if you spend some time reading this 5-year capital plan, you're going to get the understanding of where these big projects are. But it's way beyond just roads. It's much larger than that. The government, the business of running our city comes with public safety, water, sewer, stormwater, roads, parks, millions upon millions of dollars. And it just gets eaten away with 10,000 here, 100,000 here. Rarely do single projects in the city ever cost $1 million. It's the accumulation of these things that add up. The 5-year plan goes on with $10,000 here for network equipment for the city, $24,000 for PCs and things that need to be replaced, and $10,000 a year for software license, and $54,000 a year for server and equipment, and $110,000 a year for wireless redundancy and backups to ensure the city can stay up their network, $60,000 for hard disk arrays and software servers, $25,000 for data centers usage, $10,000 for security replacements for cameras and things. Hundreds of thousands of dollars just maintaining the IT infrastructure of the government, of our treatment plants, of our police departments, of our city hall, of our courts, our prosecutor's office. It adds up fast. Overall, this capital improvement plan is tens of millions of dollars over 5 years being spent. And as you can see, just some of the numbers I've shared, the majority of these capital dollars are going to water and sewer, police cars and fire trucks and roads, not bike trails. We have years we spend a lot of money on bike trails, and then for years we don't spend any money on bike trails. It's an important asset, if you use it or not, to our community. It is a reason why people come to Xenia. It just is. Last weekend also was the opening day of the bike trails, although the weather's not been cooperating. But Friends of Xenia Station was out at Xenia Station welcoming bikers on the opening day of the trails. This is kicking off spring as they come into the city. I learned quite a bit just for 1 or 2 events that they held at the Bike Hub, just listening to what brings people to Xenia and even what kept them from coming to Xenia. There are bikers who bike miles upon miles, and they get to Xenia and they get downtown and they get kind of turned around and they have to ride on the sidewalk. That downtown project is right now to try to fix. It is an asset, and it is not a priority above anything else. It does not get more attention and money than water. It does not get more attention and money than police. It does not get more attention and money than the fire department. It does not get more attention and money than the parks. It does not, well, it's part of the parks. It does not get more attention and money than the road. Bike trails are a priority. It is not the priority. Roads are a big priority. It is still not the number one priority. If you look at city spending, if you wanted to look at spending and revenue in and expenses out to understand priorities, water, sewer, public safety, top 3. Water, sewer, public safety. Top 3 priorities, top 3 expenses in our community, water, sewer, public safety. All right, I'm rambling. Just remember that. Top priorities for infrastructure, water, sewer, public safety. Roads are right up there, probably 4th, if you just look at spending. So, again, 5-year capital plan. Take some time, read it. If you don't go to any meeting, if you don't read any city budget, if you don't talk to any elected official, read the 5-year plan. Email me with your questions. Just read the 5-year plan and understand where the money is going. Look, the city can do so much better at using the tools available to them to inform the public. But the public, you and I, we could do so much better using the tools that they do provide us to become informed, because we're not going to get a personal invitation to every council meeting. We're not going to get a personal invitation to vote on every issue. We're not going to get a personal invitation unless they're working on our street. Take some energy to be an informed resident. And I'm not saying that the residents are to blame for any lack of transparency. I'm just saying that communication is a two-way street. It takes mouths and ears and energy. All right, guys. Again, go to the city's website. I'll have the link here with this post on xeniaword.com. Go to ci.xenia.oh.us to get a copy of the budget, copy of the 5-year plan. The city's even got their checkbook online now. You can see every dollar coming in and out of the city, where it's going, who's attached to it, what names are attached to it. Do it. Use it. Look at it. Don't take a college course on it. But if you don't do anything, I would just encourage you, if you don't look at any document or any press release ever put out by the city of Xenia, read the 5-year capital improvement plan. It will give you an idea into the mind of the people making these decisions. You may not like what you see. You may not agree with it. I will almost guarantee, though, if you do it with an open mind, that you're not going to think it's tyrants with out-of-control spending. My opinion, though, and that's one thing that we give you at Xenia's Word on Street is local news, events, and views. So this is just one of my views. Again, guys, I appreciate you so much time. It's been X-Town, the podcast. To get local news, events, and views, go to xeniaword.com. Again, I'm always looking for people to provide content. If you want to write about our city, you want to share an opinion, talk about an event, be on a podcast. I'm looking to interview people doing great things in our community. Please email me at josh@xeniaword.com. I want to write about you. I want to get you an interview on a podcast. I want to help contribute to our public dialogue about more than just downtown parking and potholes, because we have so much more to talk about in addition to downtown parking and potholes. All right, guys, take it easy.
Hey, what is this?
Xenia's Word on the Street.